A stronger day, be your best every day. Hi, I'm Lomas, founder and director of Strong Optimizer. I aim to help you stay healthy, be happier, and deal with challenges with greater resilience. How do you develop a well-being framework that includes the different perspective and experience of many cultures? How do you even build a global well-being? Today, you will meet Dr. Tim Lomas. Tim will share his involvement with the Global Wellbeing Initiative project and how the initiative can translate into well-being activities across different cultures. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Demas. I'm the founder and director of Strong Optimizer. Thank you for watching Strong Optimizer, the Size Up Your Wellbeing series. Today we had Dr. Tim Lomas from Seattle joining us. Tim was the senior lecturer of positive psychology at the University of East London. In his previous life, he was a singer in a ska band and psychiatric nursing assistant and an English teacher in China. It's so good to have you with us today, Tim. How are you doing?
Thanks, Demas. I'm doing well, thanks. Nice to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
No worries, no worries. Look, so you were, or maybe you still are singers. Are you ready to sing for us today? Is it why you're here today, Tim?
That does feel like another life, but I did spend a lot of time doing that, especially in my 20s. We really tried to make a go of being a professional band. And well, it's tough to make money, but we were pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know if I guess you have Australian listeners, so maybe one of our highlights. We played with the Cat Empire, which was, I mean, it's a band I love, and I guess people there know them. So like, I was such a play and then watch them play. So there were some cool experiences, but it's tough to make a career in music.
Yeah, but sounds like it's one of your passions when it comes to performing art and singing.
Definitely a passion, yeah. So, but though not played so much recently, but I am intending to try and get back into it. Maybe launch an acoustic career of some kind.
Okay, maybe that can be part of your practices, you know?
Maybe, yeah. But I love doing it anyway. It's still a passion of mine, so it's nice to think back on that.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, to be honest, before I met you, I have no idea what is ska music. So I know that
not many people do. It's fine. It's quite a niche genre.
All right. So I don't know how you'll be able to enlighten us or to explain to us using words like, in a nutshell, what is ska music?
Oh, well, it comes from the same roots as reggae and maybe even preceded it, but it's like a form of faster reggae. So if you can imagine, reggae tends to hit the offbeat, and then ska is almost like twice as fast. So double the
even faster.
So, but there's a blurry line between them. So some songs kind of just fall in the middle, kind of rock steady songs. So it's related to reggae. So other fast reggae is how I tend to describe it. But then being British, there was like a, reggae and ska came over, but then mixed with like punk and rock in the UK in an interesting way. So there's just an interesting kind of subgenre of ska in the UK, which, we became part of, which was fun.
I know that you're not here to solely talk to us about the ska music, but on a very inspiring global project that you're involving in, and it's called the Global Wellbeing Initiative. So in view of that, I'm going to let you off the hook about the singing, unless you insist.
That's okay.
Okay, good. So Tim, when I first came across this Global Wellbeing Initiative, or GWI, I personally feel very much excited because of this global, inclusive, and cross-cultural focus on well-being. But at the same time, I also feel somewhat overwhelmed. I mean, because there are so many cultures in the world which have a very different understanding and experience of well-being as compared to the Western-centric perspective of well-being. So when you talk about global well-being, where do you even begin?
Yeah, I hear what you mean, because, culture, there's obviously so many different cultures, and then, cultures within cultures, and different places are so dynamic and have different schools and traditions and philosophies within them. So I agree, it can be almost overwhelming, the amount of kind of complexity and nuance So, I've tried to think of various ways to render the complexity more comprehensible. So I'll give one example. I've been drawn to this concept, and I didn't formulate it. I'm really influenced by the work of Ken Wilber, by the way, if people know him. And one of the concepts he proposed or has been associated with is a notion of universal pluralism or universal relativism, which sounds like a paradox, and it kind of is, but it's also not. Essentially, making the case that human beings they share universals, and that's something I believe in. We're influenced by culture, but I do believe there's a kind of core common human nature. We value similar things, being healthy, being loved, having relationships, having meaning, having purpose. So I do think there are strong human universals. And there's obviously different frameworks for understanding these. Probably the most well-known is Maslow's framework, which, can be misinterpreted. I'm not even sure he necessarily meant it to be a strict hierarchy, but nevertheless, it's a framework of needs that matter to people for their well-being. So that kind of aligns with the kind of universalist perspective. Then even within that universalism, you can allow and make room for pluralism, for difference. So, for example, all people maybe have a deep need to feel secure and safe, but then different cultures might formulate different legal systems, different sets of norms, different ways of arranging this security. So, even though there is great diversity in, for example, legal systems or, ways of keeping people safe, it does all kind of fall within this universal need for safety. Or again, you might think an impulse towards the sacred, towards religion and spirituality, I think is a human universal. And obviously cultures have so many different ways of approaching the sacred and of expressing and conceptualizing spirituality and religion. So that for me is at least one way to make sense of it. You can think, well, say just with religion and spirituality, there's such great difference, and you don't want to lose sight of that. You don't want to get rid of differences, it's the same. But then at the same time, also being to understand that difference in the context of the universal impulse. And so for me, that's one way I've tried to reconcile that. So you can try to, I think, identify, for example, the needs that people require to experience well-being, but then look for variation within those needs. So that's one way in which we're trying to do that, I think.
Okay, well said. I guess in other words, you're talking about as human beings, there are universal needs or desires, whether it's towards, let's say, a sense of security, belongings, connectedness, meaning of purpose. But within that universalism, there are different ways of expressing and of experiencing, and the same for the well-being as well.
Yes, exactly. And that, for me at least, helps to, on the one hand, make sense of, make sense of the complexity, because it does reduce it to a set of kind of core human universals. But at the same time, you can still keep in mind the differences and the nuances and the variation. And that's also very interesting. But within this more universal framework that at least allows things to kind of come together, as opposed to being scattered and disparate and fragmented.
Excellent. So tell us exactly, what is Global Wellbeing Initiative? I mean, what are his vision and mission, and who is it for, Tim?
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks, Adimis. Well, I think the genesis goes back to, I think some years, it's what's the word? It's the creation, the kind of brainchild, the inspiration of a Japanese foundation called Wellbeing for Planet Earth. And they're actually a relatively new foundation in themselves, but founded by some kind of very dynamic, smart people in Japan who've drawn together some funding to create this foundation. And the essence of the foundation is to really generate a more global conversation about what well-being is. So recognizing that conventional or common or dominant ways of looking at well-being might be considered Western-centric, measures like life satisfaction. I mean, it's not that these don't apply globally. I do think people all around the world can, think about and answer questions relating to life satisfaction. But the question is whether these account for all the nuances of well-being. And I think this foundation recognized that there was real scope and a real need for, greatly expanding our conception of what well-being is, and assessing it and understanding it in a global way. So not just measuring it globally using Western-centric measures, like I said, but actually thinking about new constructs and new measurement tools and so on. So this foundation was launched, I think, 2 years ago.
All right. Okay.
And then its kind of flagship program has been this partnership with Gallup.
Okay.
So Global Wellbeing Initiative is this partnership between Wellbeing for Planet Earth, the Japanese group, and Gallup. And so the partnership involves developing well-being related items for the Gallup World Poll that reflect more kind of non-Western perspectives on well-being. Yeah. So, as maybe your kind of listeners know, like since 2005, Gallup has assessed well-being globally, mainly using like a life satisfaction measure called Cantor's Ladder, and then measures of positive emotions and so on. And, they're really helpful. They're very relevant. And Gallup does an amazing job of assessing these in like over 160 countries.
Wow.
But, the issue is do those measures capture everything that's relevant about well-being, or are there kind of other ideas, other perspectives that might be relevant? So this partnership, it's been since 2019 in operation, developing these new items. So the first set of items were developed towards the end of 2019, and then were included in last year's 2020 Gallup World Poll.
Yeah.
And we had 9 items there. And the initial focus was just on Eastern perspectives, associated with Eastern cultures like Japan. So we developed some items around balance and harmony, and relationships with group, and low arousal, positive emotions like tranquility, peace, and calmness, and so on. Then there's been a second iteration of these items in the 2021 poll that's about to start. So we've retained those, but also added some new ones. For instance, around vitality and mindfulness and spirituality, relationship to nature. So an interesting set of items. So expanding the roster of items relating to well-being in the Gallup World Poll. And like I say, initially the focus has just been on Eastern perspectives because, that's the kind of origin of the foundation and the project. But the long-term goal, because, the foundation envisages this as a real long-term project with Gallup, is to then explore perspectives from other regions, for, all different world regions. So hopefully we can kind of add to the items we've got. Yeah. So in essence, that's the Global Wellbeing Initiative. I mean, it's not just about the Gallup poll. It's also about trying to, build a community of, interested people, a community of scholars, community of experts, trying to influence policy, trying to, inform conversations and debates worldwide around well-being. So obviously we're trying to, the work with Gallup is like the foundation for that. This is the kind of gathering data and analyzing it. So it's a real substantial foundation. But from that, the idea is to hopefully then, inspire people, shape conversations, influence policy, that sort of thing. So it's super ambitious. And I mean, I just love being involved with it. It's been a real, real joy, real privilege to be involved. And I'm just kind of, surrounded by a great team of people who are quite inspiring to work with, very inspiring to work with. So.
Absolutely. So Tim, to clarify, when you talk about the Gallup World Poll, so it's the intentions of the Global Wellbeing Initiatives to every year to develop different type of well-being skills, so to speak, that capture different aspects of well-being and roll it out year after year after year?
It's more the case that we're trying to, essentially these first 2 years, we're essentially experimenting and, iterating our items. Ideally, by, say, 2023, we want to have a set of items that are quite stable, that are settled upon, that might, in some senses, constitute a form of kind of comprehensive well-being scale, of different dimensions of well-being. So I think the idea is to use these initial years just to explore, to experiment, to see what happens, and then, as a result, iterate our items, and then by hopefully 2023, have a relatively fixed set of items that we can then, then, because ideally you want to keep the same items in place so you can explore longitudinal trends. So ideally you can have a set of items in place by 2023 and then keep that going year after year to then look at trends and see how things play out over time.
Yeah. So in other words, one of the aims of the mission is to use the skill to actually assess how different cultures, subculture, regions, countries, nationalities, ethnic groups understand and experience well-being.
Yeah, exactly. And then, because we're trying to identify these ideas and perspectives on well-being and incorporate them into the scale, but then it's really, really interesting to see how these play out worldwide. So, I mentioned in the 2021 poll, we have items relating to balance and harmony, and these have been like accentuated or emphasized in Eastern cultures. But, my hypothesis, my intuition would be that these don't only matter to people in Eastern cultures. They may have a much more kind of universal relevance, or at least be more widely valued than it's often appreciated. So it's not the case, I don't think, that we would just see them being relevant in Eastern cultures. I think even if they've been emphasized there and those cultures have like led the way in kind of conceptualizing them, I think it'd be really interesting, at least just to see, compare different countries on metrics such as balance and harmony or tranquility or, relationship to nature, vitality, all these really interesting concepts.
Yeah. Excellent. I guess that's what makes this project or this initiative so exciting, but also audacious as well. Just trying to, I guess, capture or at least provide a grand picture overviews that well-being definitely go beyond the traditional Western-centric kind of measurement tools, and just continue, as you said, to spark the conversations, to shape dialogues, and hopefully eventually be able to change the policy as well.
Hopefully, yeah. And you're right. I think it is really kind of bold and audacious. And I just, I love the vision of the founders of the foundation, and, Gallup too, really inspiring in their commitment and energy here, because, I think they've bought into the mission, and they're on board with it, because, they're all about trying to develop the most kind of nuanced, comprehensive assessment they can. And obviously they've been doing it for years, but this just adds a new dimension in terms of trying to think about well-being. So the whole partnership is a real kind of exciting energy going on there.
Yeah. So once the Gallup World Polls rolls out, who can be the participants? Like, how will people actually participate? Or is it going to be randomly assigned? How does it work?
Well, I think maybe in essence, they try to recruit, I think it's 1,000 people in each country every year. Yeah. And those 1,000 people don't stay the same each year, but so it's different 1,000 people, but they're very careful to try to create a representative sample, in that country. So they go to great lengths to, carefully select the people and make sure it's a really broad range of, all demographic variables,
Yeah.
So, so the data they get really hopefully can be considered representative of those countries. I think it's 1,000 people in each country, and then obviously you then weight that data depending on the size of the country when you analyze it. So it's roughly that, and I think it's at least 160 countries a year, and sometimes more, depending on the kind of local dynamics. But it's hugely ambitious, and I think it's been running in some form since the 50s, I believe. Wow. And Gallup has been kind of conducting.
Yeah, it's been around for a while. Yeah.
Abroad since the 50s, and this kind of Gallup World Poll, I think, came into being in its current form in 2005. So even then, it's obviously 15, 16 years. Yes.
That's great. I think that perhaps that's one of the strengths of Gallup, that certainly have been doing these world polls for a long time. So they not only have the resources, but also have the tools, has expertise to roll this out. Yeah.
Yeah, they just got such expertise within, and then the people they partner with, and expertise and experience and skills and insight. So yeah, it's been fantastic. I've just loved working with them, and the foundation likewise. So it's a very exciting partnership, and it's still pretty new. So it's going to be just exciting to see where it goes, and the kind of like you say, conversations it can help generate and inspire, and perhaps lead to policy changes. Who knows?
Yes, right. That's right.
It's like I say, it's a real bold vision. So hopefully it's going to have a similarly bold, big impact.
That's good. Looking forward. And I guess that
And it's nice to share it with you. So thanks for inviting me, because we're keen to get the message out there, as it were. So
absolutely. So apart from the bold vision of trying to understand or capture a global view of well-being, what are some other key driving forces behind the GWI?
Well, besides kind of developing a kind of more kind of nuanced global understanding, it's also about building bridges, making connections between people, between cultures, bringing people together. That, like I said, I mentioned that's one of the aims of the foundation and the Global Wellbeing Initiative, is to create this community of people, because, worldwide, obviously so many people are interested in well-being, and also have so much to offer. And if we can find ways to facilitate conversations and dialogue and, bring people together, channel ideas from different cultures, different countries. So very much in essence of building relationships and community. And then, ultimately the big picture, trying to build a more kind of global community, foster understanding between people from different cultures, and create bridges, create that kind of friendship across the world. So
like the idea. Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
great.
It's beautiful. It's a lovely vision. It's a really beautiful vision. And I think, I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. Also, just out of curiosity, I guess that when you talk about building a global community, and obviously there's a group of experts and a team working behind the scenes, but sometimes I guess that the tendency may be just people may ask the questions: are all these so-called measurements or findings still sort of determined by a small group of experts, or to what extent you be to include, so to speak, and to build the global community?
Yeah, I'm really keen for any of our, items and insights and knowledge production to be kind of democratic and from the ground up, as opposed to being kind of just determined by a few people at the top.
Yeah.
In a top-down way, So I think we're trying to think about other ways to essentially crowdsource knowledge in a way about relevant items, whether that's through qualitative research or surveys to find out items. So not just thinking of items and then putting them in the Gallup World Poll, but other kinds of surveys simply to find out about potentially relevant items, so from the ground up, getting people's perspectives on what they might be. And then something we've also tried even already with the current items, when we have potential items and options, different ways of phrasing them, to almost have a democratic process where you could sort of have people vote on them, or collectively try and kind of work out which people feel is the best, as opposed to just a couple of people making decisions on their own. So in all that ways, we're really trying to, draw far and wide into drawing on people's knowledge and making it kind of bottom up, ground up, democratic kind of process.
Yeah. Excellent. And as earlier on, I mentioned that when we talk about global well-being, for some of us can be very much overwhelming, that we do not know if we do once have this data or this outcome, what can we do about the data or the result? So I guess the next question is that how do you actually translate the Global Wellbeing Initiative into localized and contextualized well-being activities that actually effect change, so that different cultures will be able to actually use them? Or is that part of the intentions of the GWI?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that would definitely involve or require partnerships with people in those contexts, because the whole essence of the project is that you cannot just have a one-size-fits-all framework that applies everywhere, because the idea is that globally cultures are diverse and nuanced. So in terms of adapting the findings in an applied way to a given local context, that would obviously take kind of partners on the ground, as it were, in those cultures, to take what was relevant and then to adapt it in those ways. I mean, let me give you one example. So let's say one of our items is around spirituality, and the importance of that to well-being. The way in which that might, play out on the ground would depend on context. What are the local traditions, let's say? That would obviously determine how you would harness those kind of insights to create any applied interventions.
Yeah.
So it's always about being like sensitive to what are the local dynamics and the local needs and the local perspectives. So I think hopefully we can just create a framework that's rich and flexible enough that people can then take it, but then, adapt it in, in ways that suits where they are, hopefully. So, I think that's still definitely some way off for us, because we're still just at a stage of just trying to build up the scale and the data and the results and the analysis. But from there, it'd be lovely to try and think about partnering with, local organizations in different contexts to shape how these might be harnessed.
Yeah. And I guess I really like the idea of partnerships and leveraging the localized understanding and resources to know how to best adapt some of these findings into what matters to them. And the other way I'm seeing about the role of GWI is to basically catalyze a movement that eventually can create a sense of momentum for people who truly want to take well-being at the grassroots level that's going to make a difference in whichever areas or circle of influence that they're in as well, whether it's the leaders, whether it's the workplaces or sports. Yeah.
I hope so, yeah. Because obviously people around the world are already hugely interested in well-being and wanting to facilitate it. So ideally we can just help with that. There's obviously lots of other people helping too, and then we can just add to that energy, to that conversation. And if what we do is useful, that'll be great for us.
Excellent. So, I'm just going to ask you one last question, and it's a personal question in the sense that what is one thing that you have been doing this week to look after your own well-being?
Oh, okay. You know what the funny thing is? Because basically taking photos, it sounds funny because, I really like, obviously I have a smartphone, but, I've never really got into taking photos and been a bit lazy about it. But then my wife was saying to me, I take some nice photos. She goes, well, you should take some and put them on Instagram and share them. And then so I've made a sort of point now of trying to take photos each day. And then it's been really lovely because you're kind of almost like on the lookout for beauty. You go out for a walk and as opposed to just like being lost in my thoughts or whatever, like looking out for, oh, that's a nice tree, or that's a bird in the branch there, that's nice, or this flower's beautiful, and then taking pictures. So it's almost like trying to keep a lookout for things that are beautiful. Yeah. And I found that really uplifting, and then I've been playing with the filters and uploading to Instagram and sharing them. And that's been like literally just been, I think, the last 10 days I've started that. I'm not sure what prompted me.
Yeah.
I think maybe it was a New Year's resolution, but for some reason I just thought I'm going to really get into trying to take photos. Yeah. And I've been doing it since the past 10 days, and it's been really nice.
It sounds like you are perhaps cultivating the strengths of appreciation of beauty, to deliberately, intentionally look for beautiful things. Yeah.
It feels like that, yeah, because I'm not an artist. Well, unless you count music, we'll have to.
You sing, right? So you're an artist.
Obviously, it's an artist, but I'm not a visual artist. I can't paint or anything, but getting quite into the whole photography process. And it does feel like, I say, opening, your eyes and your mind to things I might not even notice before if I wasn't in this mindset to take photos. Yeah. So that's one thing that's been the past week that's been quite cool to get involved with.
Excellent. That's so good to know. So good to hear. Well, I'm afraid that that's all the time that we have for today. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, Tim. And for our listeners out there, if you want to engage Tim's expertise in positive psychology, either through the speaking, consulting, and training engagement, make sure you visit his website at drtimlomas.com. That's Dr. Tim Lomas, LOMAS.com. And of course, if you're keen to find out more about the details of the Global Wellbeing Initiative, please visit his website at Global Wellbeing Initiative, which is one word, globalwellbeinginitiative.org. Thank you for watching. I'm Demas from Strength Optimizers. We're here to bring out the best in you through optimizing your strengths. Have a fantastic day, everyone. Ciao and goodbye.
Bye.